So what did the Prophet teach us about trade and what he's told about business and how he himself conducted that as well. So as we know, the Prophet was a businessman themselves. So what is trade? And ulama define trade and business as buying one thing and selling it, having one thing and then selling it with a view to make a profit. So that's different to having one thing and giving it away free. That would be deemed as trade. And similarly, normally, if you work for somebody as an employee, that's not seen as business, although you can be seen as trading your time, because rather than selling goods, you're selling your time. If you're working 8 hours in a factory or an office, you are selling your time. So you could bring it through that, but technically in Islamic law, trade is seen as where you buy one thing and then sell it later on for a profit, with a view to make a profit. But in some of the hadiths, the Prophet also applies to workers. So even though you might not be a businessman, but you're working in a factory or in an office, it equally applies to you as well. So a person might ask, why do we discuss business and trade when we're talking about Islam and the Prophet? This is because the Prophet was an example for all of us and for all aspects of our life. So you can't just say the teachings of Islam only relate to one aspect, which is your religious life or your ibadat and your worship. The teachings of Islam relate, and we'll see that through the words of the Prophet ﷺ, to all aspects of our lives, whether it's your business, whether it's your married life, whether it's your personal life, whether it's how you play sports, even relates to how you go to sleep, how you wake up, how you eat. So all of these things that you may think are not related to your ibadah, they are related to Islam. And that's because Islam has come to create the ideal human being, the model person, the model human being. We want the human being to reach the high state. Allah Ta'ala said, that we created a human being in the best form. And to be in the best form, it covers everything. So you can't be a good Muslim who worships, but is a bad businessman. You can't be a person who is a good worshipper who worships all night, but you're bad to your neighbours or bad to other people. It doesn't work like that. And it permeates. If you're bad in one aspect of your life, it permeates, and it's a disease that affects the other part of your life. You start lying in worldly matters, you will start lying in religious matters as well. If you cheat people in the daytime, when you come to pray, you cheat Allah Ta'ala, na'uzubillah. Because you're in the habit of cutting corners, you're in the habit of doing things wrong. If you lie during the day, you lie during your prayers, you lie during your du'as, and your commitments like that. So it permeates all aspects. And if you're a better businessman, you're a better social person, you'll become a better Muslim as well, because the goodness in that will also come into your deen. So the Prophet ﷺ said that seeking halal earnings is an obligation after the obligations. Meaning that after the obligation of Islam, you have the 4 obligations of Islam, we have 5 pillars before all those obligations, such as Salat, Zakat, Sawm and Hajj. After those obligations, seeking halal earning, seeking this halal livelihood is an obligation. So ulama discuss, why is it an obligation? Why does the Prophet ﷺ said it's farz, it's a fariza after those 4 faraid that you have? It's because although it's not directly ibadat, it affects all your other ibadats. If you didn't have halal earnings, then the sadaqah, the zakat you give won't be accepted, because it's based upon the immoral earnings and illegal earnings. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, the house you live in, if that's from haram earnings, then that will affect you when you pray in that house, when you pray after eating that food, when you pray with those clothes on that are from haram, they will affect your obligations. You go to Hajj with haram earnings, that will affect the sincerity and the fulfillment of those obligations. So halal earnings is seen as an obligation after those obligations, because it supports those farais. So it's a really important part that underpins that. So halal earnings has 2 aspects to it. One is what you earn, so you make sure what you earn is halal. And second part is how you earn it. So you may have halal earnings, as your trade is halal, you're selling business. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said that there'll come a time when people won't care whether their earnings are halal or haram. And maybe we're in that time now, where people just want wealth, no matter where it comes from, and they won't care where that money comes from. So that it won't matter people won't care where the money comes from. But it does matter how you earn it and what you do with it. As I said, it's part of that fariza that we have. It's an obligation because it affects everything else that you have. So the next thing the Prophet ﷺ said about earnings is that the Prophet ﷺ said that the honest businessman, it will be with the prophets, the siddiqeen and the shuhada. So the honest businessman will be with the prophets, the siddiqeen and the shuhada. Now these are the ranks that Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Fatih, who are the people that Allah Ta'ala has blessed? He has blessed the prophets, the shuhada and the salihin. And the Prophet ﷺ said the honest businessman will be with those people. So it shows a great rank of an honest businessman. So honest businessman doesn't just relate to what you earn, but how you earn it. So you earn it through honesty. And the Prophet ﷺ said that person who always takes custom when he sells something, the businessman is always taking oaths. He will not be completed. In one of this, he says he will be destroyed. So you don't keep taking oaths all the time around business. So an honest businessman, and economists will tell you that one of the key things about a successful society is to have a good economy. You can see the problems in Pakistan and other countries where the economy is weak. Where the economy is weak, you get other social problems. Where the economies are strong, where economies are weak, people then start to cheat, people then start to steal, you get child labour, people are worried about everything else, and that all affects the society, and then that affects your worship. If you're worried about where your next meal is going to come from, that's going to affect your ibadat. If you have to believe that you have to be dishonest, you're affected. So that's what the Prophet ﷺ said, that just as the Anbiya, the Siddiqeen and Shuhada make sacrifices to make the society better. The prophets came to teach us and make us better people. The Siddiqeen lead with example, and the Shuhada give their lives for society, give their lives for the betterment. Similarly, honest businessman, by being honest, he strengthens that society because he makes a stronger economy. One of the things that economists say is that a strong economy is an open market or an honest marketplace. They call it a perfect marketplace. And one of the traits of a perfect marketplace is that you have perfect information. When you have perfect information, you will make the proper decisions. So when you have dishonest businessmen giving you the wrong information, you will buy the wrong things, or you will buy them at the wrong price. And when that happens, it distorts the market, it distorts the economy. So people will be buying the wrong things. If you're part of a supply chain, if your supplier is supplying you the wrong things, corrupt things, things that are defective, or not in the specification that you wanted, you will put those into your machinery. You will use that as part of your supply chain. You will supply your customers. And when people start getting the wrong things, they will stop buying, or they themselves will start cheating. So when one businessman cheats, the other businessman cheats. Then everybody starts cheating because it becomes a norm. But like we're saying, like in most Islamic countries, people say you can't do anything without bribery. That's because everybody gives bribery, then everybody else has to give bribery, because that's become the custom. And when lying starts to become the custom, then the whole marketplace falls apart. It's like when we go back to our own countries, you go to a shop, you can't trust the seller for the price he tells you, because they don't write the price down. When you say, how much is this? And they say it's 1,000 riyal or it's 1,000 rupees. But then you end up buying it for 100 rupees, because you barter it down, because they put the price up so much. So people like us who go from the West, when we can't stand that, because we just don't want to barter. We want to know what the fixed price is you paid and you walk out the door and take it. They say 1,000, you don't know whether it's 1,000 or not. But because you know that they put the price up, you will doubt them. And you start arguing and arguing. And sometimes you might lose the trade. It might be for 1,000 rupees a thing. But because you didn't believe that it's for 1,000 rupees, because you know that people always ask for the wrong price at the start, you will walk away, you will lose the trade. So when that defective happens, it affects the economy. That's what. But if everybody's honest, then everybody can openly buy things, openly interact, and it makes the supply chain stronger. If you know that your supplier is giving you the right things, you can confidently put them into your supplies, into your goods, and that will sell better. So, honest businessman. So you need to be honest. And the other thing about the custom, or even though somebody might be taking custom on oath properly, but if you keep taking oath properly, people doubt you. But also when you don't take the oath, what will people think? Because you think he always takes the oath, today he's not taking an oath. That must mean there's something dodgy going on, something wrong. So don't fall into that trap of just taking oaths. And the Fuqaha said you should only be taking oaths when it's really, really important. So businessmen and traders and sellers should not be taking oaths all the time and doing that. An honest businessman affects us as workers, because you go to work, you get paid for 40 hours a week. Did you really work 40 hours a week? Especially when you're working from home nowadays. Are you really putting those hours in? If you're not, then you're cheating, because you're not honest. You know, you're making the employer pay you for things you didn't need to be paid for because you did that. All that does is puts the prices up of things. It increases the cost of the company, which means they put the prices up, which then it comes back and affects you. So what people realise is the economy is circular. You know, you start charging more, everybody else will charge more. And all that happens is prices keep going up and up and up and up. And to an extent that actually, like now, it's very hard to buy a house in the UK. It's still the same house with still the same bricks and mortar, but now it's become so hard to buy the house because circular economy, people who outbid and put more money in, it's very hard to buy it. It's kind of become stagnant. And that comes to my final point. The Prophet ﷺ also said one of the reasons why businesses go bankrupt is not because they don't sell enough, it's because of cash flow. They run out of cash. And cash flow is a big part of business. And part of the reason why cash flow stops because people don't pay their debts. And you know, we used to have that, you know, you have circular debt. Debt just stops. One person doesn't pay another person. How's that person in the supply chain going to pay his people? How's that person going to pay the other person? It just stops, and the whole economy comes to a standstill. We had that many times in Pakistan where actually the government gives, to break that cycle, the government gives money to one person or one company, which then pays its debts off, pays their debts off, to unblock the economy. The Prophet ﷺ said that anybody who takes a debt on with the intention of paying it back, Allah Ta'ala will pay you back for it. Meaning Allah Ta'ala will give you the barakat and the asbab to be able to pay that debt back. But anybody who takes a debt on with the intention of not paying it back, Allah Ta'ala will destroy his wealth. So the aim is that whenever you do take a debt on, and a lot of business does work on credit, because people supply you, you pay them back in 30 days or 60 days, and then you do that. But some people have the intention of never paying you back. And especially in our own countries, people see that as a tactic. They see, you know, if you pay people on time, you're seen as a silly businessman, a stupid businessman. You know, the more you can drag it out, the better. People start using other people's money. And there's a whole economy base that people are thinking that's doing that, but in the long run, you're doing that wrong. There's another hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that pay the worker before his sweat dries. So pay the worker before his sweat dries. What this means is pay him on time, which means before he's finished his work, or when he's finished his work, pay him very soon after he's finished his work. There's another hadith about fasting, when the Prophet ﷺ said that an employee or a worker is only paid once he finishes work. So pay them when they finish their work. And we know that if you pay people before they finish their work, they never finish the work. So you pay them when they finish the work. But as soon as they finish the work, you must pay them before the sweat dries. Again, people shouldn't be chasing you, because if you don't pay people, people won't come back to you. You lose out in the long run. So next time when we come, we'll talk about even more about this, about how these rules of the Prophet ﷺ actually make you a better businessman in the long run. If you cheat, you will only cheat somebody once. They'll never come back to you. You will over time lose customers. And this is the whole thing about, in the Western world, they call brand. If you can create a brand, then you'll be successful. People will come to you without thinking about it. We know certain brands, you know they stand for quality, and they stand for what you get. You know their value for money. You will always go to them. Other brands you know are dodgy. People won't go to them. Even if they try and rebrand themselves, people will never get a customer back. So in the long run, people know you're an honest businessman. You pay people on time. People who want to do business with you. When people do business with you, every trade you make a profit on. So you will make more trade on that. So we're running out of time now. So may Allah Ta'ala give us the ability, you know, to be honest in our affairs, to act upon the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, to allow us to earn halal, allow us to eat halal, and to teach other people halal as well. وصلى الله عليه وسلم برحمته يا أرحم الراحمين.